Thanksgiving had always been the same for me. Family dinners, polite small talk, and pretending to fit into a mold I had outgrown. But this year, everything was different. This year, I was alone. After years of marriage, I had finally admitted to myself a truth I had buried for too long. I wasn't meant to be with a woman. The divorce was finalized, and now, on Thanksgiving Day, while the world around me celebrated love, family, and togetherness, I sat in my empty apartment, staring at my phone. Then, on a whim, or maybe out of desperation, I did something I never thought I would. I installed a gay dating app, and that's when I met him. A man with a smile that made my stomach flip, with a confidence I envied, with eyes that made me forget every doubt I ever had. We texted, we laughed, and before I knew it, I wasn't spending Thanksgiving alone anymore. I was about to meet someone who would change everything. Have you ever taken a leap of faith and found love in the most unexpected place? This is a story about self-discovery, second chances, and falling in love when you least expect it. Stay until the end for a journey filled with passion, conflict, and an ending that will warm your heart. Thanksgiving had always been predictable. The same dinner, the same routine, the same conversations I had memorized over the years. But this time, the silence in my apartment was deafening. No family, no wife, no expectations, just me. I had spent the past year unraveling the life I had built, a life that wasn't mine to begin with. For 10 years, I had done what was expected. Married young, built a home, played the role. But deep inside, I knew. I had always known. And now, at 30, I was starting over. Alone. I stared at my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. It had been years since I felt nervous about something as simple as downloading an app. But this wasn't just any app. This was the kind of app I had never dared to open before. A dating app. A gay dating app. I swallowed hard. What the hell was I even doing? The app finished downloading, and before I could second-guess myself, I opened it. A flood of profiles filled my screen, men smiling, posing, some shirtless, others more reserved. It felt overwhelming, exciting, terrifying. I hesitated for a moment before setting up my profile. Ryan, 30, newly single, figuring things out. Not the most enticing bio, but it was honest. Within minutes, messages started coming in. Some were polite, some were not. I scrolled past flirty one-liners and explicit invitations until one message caught my eye. So, first Thanksgiving alone? Same here. Want to make it a little less depressing? I clicked on the profile. Aaron, 23. His photo was casual, a warm smile, messy blonde hair, piercing blue eyes. He looked confident, like he knew exactly who he was, the kind of confidence I wished I had. I hesitated before typing. Was I really doing this? Meeting a stranger on Thanksgiving? Before I could overthink it, I replied, Yeah, first one alone. Not sure if I'm doing this right. There's no right way. Just go with it. Want to grab a drink? A drink with a man on Thanksgiving. I exhaled, my heart racing. This was new territory. This was terrifying. But after years of pretending to be someone I wasn't, maybe it was time to take a risk. I typed 2 words that would change everything. Yeah, where? Ryan stood in front of the bathroom mirror, his hands gripping the edge of the sink as he stared at his reflection. His dark brown hair was slightly disheveled, and the faint shadow of stubble framed his jaw. He had dressed casually, dark jeans and a fitted black sweater, but now, doubt crept in. Was he really about to do this? It felt surreal. Just hours ago, he had been sitting alone in his apartment, debating whether to order takeout or heat up a frozen dinner. Now, he was about to step out into the world as someone new, someone who wasn't hiding. The thought made his stomach twist, but there was something else beneath the anxiety. Excitement. His phone buzzed. Aaron. I'm here. Sitting at the bar, gray hoodie. No pressure, but I'm on my second drink already. Ryan exhaled sharply, shaking his head with a small laugh. Aaron's confidence was reassuring, though it also made him feel even more like an outsider. Aaron had been living this life freely while Ryan was just now stepping into it. He grabbed his keys and left before he could talk himself out of it. The bar was packed, filled with groups of friends and couples celebrating Thanksgiving in their own way. The dim lighting cast a warm glow over the space, and the sound of clinking glasses mixed with low laughter and the hum of conversation. Ryan spotted Aaron almost immediately. He sat at the bar, sipping from a whiskey glass, his blonde hair slightly messy, his hoodie loose over his lean frame. He looked effortlessly comfortable in his skin, like someone who knew exactly who he was and wasn't afraid to show it. Ryan hesitated for a moment, but Aaron must have sensed him because he looked up and smiled. "That was fast," Aaron said as Ryan approached. His voice was smooth, his eyes bright with amusement. "Figured I'd get it over with before I changed my mind," Ryan admitted, taking the seat next to him. Aaron chuckled. "Well, I appreciate the effort. First time meeting a guy off an app?" Ryan nodded, signaling the bartender. "First time on the app, actually." Aaron's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Damn. First Thanksgiving alone and first dive into dating guys? That's a lot for one day." Ryan shrugged, trying to seem nonchalant. "Might as well rip the Band-Aid off." The bartender placed a whiskey in front of Ryan, and he took a sip, letting the burn settle in his chest. Aaron watched him, a knowing smile playing on his lips. "So, tell me," Aaron said, turning slightly toward him. "Was it as scary as you thought?" Ryan considered the question. The nerves were still there, coiled in his stomach, but sitting next to Aaron, this easygoing, confident guy who had no idea how monumental this moment was for him, he didn't feel as out of place as he had expected. "No," Ryan admitted, setting his glass down. "Not as scary as I thought." Aaron grinned, nudging Ryan's arm playfully. "See? Told you. And look at you now, drinking whiskey with a guy in a gay bar on Thanksgiving. Progress." Ryan laughed, shaking his head. "You make it sound like I climbed a mountain." "Hey, for some people it is." Aaron's expression softened, and there was something sincere in his gaze. "I don't know your story, but if this is your first time really stepping into this world, yeah, it's a big deal, and you should give yourself some credit." Ryan swallowed. He wasn't used to this openness, this warmth. For years he had convinced himself that keeping everything buried was easier. But here, in this moment, with Aaron looking at him like he actually saw him, Ryan realized just how much he had missed out on. The conversation flowed easily after that. They talked about Thanksgiving traditions, about Aaron's decision to skip family dinner in favor of a night out, about Ryan's hesitations and fears. The more they talked, the more Ryan felt himself relax. Then, just as he was beginning to feel truly comfortable, Aaron's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his smile fading slightly. Ryan noticed the shift immediately. "Everything okay?" Aaron hesitated for a beat before forcing a smile. "Yeah, just my ex." Ryan felt a strange, unexpected pang in his chest. He hadn't thought about the possibility of Aaron being involved with someone else. Aaron sighed, setting his phone face down on the bar. "Sorry, didn't mean to kill the mood." Ryan shook his head, forcing himself to push away the feeling. No worries. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Was he stepping into something more complicated than he was ready for? And just like that, the night took a turn. Ryan tried to ignore the tightness in his chest as Aaron took another sip of his drink, his fingers absently tracing the rim of the glass. The weight of the unanswered message from his ex lingered between them like an invisible force, and Ryan wasn't sure what to do with it. He had just stepped into this world, just taken his first real step into something honest. The last thing he needed was to be caught in someone else's unresolved past. Aaron must have noticed the shift in his expression because he sighed and turned to face Ryan fully. "I can see the wheels turning in your head," he said, his voice softer than before. Ryan smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to." Aaron's gaze flickered toward his phone on the bar, then back to Ryan. He ran a hand through his blonde hair, exhaling sharply. "Look, it's not what you think. My ex, his name's Ben. He and I ended things months ago. But sometimes, ghosts linger." Ryan arched an eyebrow. "And what exactly did this ghost want?" Aaron hesitated. "I don't know yet. I haven't read the message." That surprised Ryan. "Why not?" Aaron gave a half smile, a little self-deprecating. "Because, for the first time in a while, I'm actually having a good night. And I don't want him screwing that up." That answer did something to Ryan. A part of him wanted to push further, to ask what kind of history still existed between Aaron and Ben, but another part, the part still trying to find his footing, decided to let it go. "Fair enough," Ryan said, picking up his drink again. Aaron studied him for a second, before shaking his head with amusement. "You're not like most guys I meet on these apps." Ryan chuckled. "That's probably because I've been on the app for all of 6 hours. Still," Aaron mused, swirling the whiskey in his glass, "most guys would have either grilled me about the text or used it as an excuse to bolt." Ryan tilted his head. "And yet, here I am." Aaron smirked. "Yeah, here you are." They held each other's gaze for a beat too long, the air between them growing heavier. The neon glow from the bar lights painted shadows across Aaron's face, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the faint stubble on his chin. Ryan's throat went dry. Aaron leaned in slightly, just enough for Ryan to feel the heat radiating from his body. "Tell me something," Aaron murmured, his voice lower now. "Why did it take you so long?" Ryan swallowed. "To do this?" Aaron nodded. Ryan looked down at his drink, watching the ice melt into amber liquid. How could he explain it? The years of pretending, the suffocating weight of expectations, the nights spent lying awake, knowing he was living a life that didn't belong to him. "I think I was afraid," Ryan admitted. His fingers traced the condensation on his glass. "Afraid that if I admitted it, it would change everything." Aaron was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "And now?" Ryan finally looked at him again. "Now, I think I was right." Aaron's lips parted slightly, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he reached forward, his fingers brushing lightly against Ryan's wrist. It was a small touch, but it sent a shock wave through Ryan's body, his pulse hammering in his ears. And then Aaron leaned in closer. "Do you want it to change?" Ryan didn't answer right away, because he knew the truth. It already had. The bar around them faded, the music, the clinking of glasses, the laughter of strangers. It was just the two of them now, the inches between them shrinking by the second. Ryan had spent years running from himself. Maybe it was time to stop. Aaron's eyes flickered to Ryan's lips, an unspoken invitation lingering in the air. Ryan's breath caught in his throat. Was he really going to do this? Then, just as he made up his mind, a loud voice interrupted them. "Aaron!" They both turned. Standing a few feet away, a man with dark hair and a tense expression stared at them, his hands clenched into fists. Ryan didn't need an introduction. Ben. Ben stood a few feet away, his dark eyes locked onto Aaron with an intensity that made Ryan's stomach tighten. There was something unspoken in his posture, a tension that suggested history, unfinished business, and something Ryan wasn't sure he wanted to be caught in the middle of. Aaron sighed, rubbing a hand over his face before turning toward his ex. "Ben," he said flatly, his voice void of any warmth. Ben's gaze flickered briefly to Ryan, taking him in, his dark sweater, his uncertain expression, the way he sat just close enough to Aaron for it to be noticeable. Ben's jaw clenched. "So, this is how you're spending Thanksgiving?" Ben said, his voice laced with something sharp. Aaron exhaled, already exhausted. "You don't get to do this. Not anymore." Ryan suddenly felt like an intruder, like he had walked into a scene that wasn't meant for him. But wasn't this exactly what he had feared? Getting involved with someone who wasn't ready, who still had strings attached to a past relationship. Ben took a step closer. "I just need to talk to you." Aaron shook his head. "Not here. Not now." Ben's expression faltered just for a second. He looked down as if gathering his words, then met Aaron's eyes again. "I miss you." Ryan's stomach twisted. Silence stretched between them. The bar, the noise, the people. It all faded into the background. Aaron didn't speak right away, and that silence was too much. Ryan shifted in his seat. "Maybe I should—" Aaron turned to him immediately, eyes widening slightly. "No," he said, almost too quickly. His hand found Ryan's knee under the bar, a grounding touch, firm, but not forceful. He turned back to Ben. "You don't get to say that to me anymore." Ben scoffed. "Why not? Because you've already moved on?" His eyes flickered toward Ryan again, filled with skepticism. Aaron's fingers tightened slightly on Ryan's knee. "Because you had your chance, and you threw it away." Ben's face hardened. "That's not fair." Aaron let out a humorless laugh. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You left, Ben. You walked away first." Ryan felt like he was balancing on the edge of something dangerous. Like any second now, this conversation would turn into something he didn't know how to handle. Ben crossed his arms. "And I regret it." His voice cracked slightly, but he masked it quickly. "I didn't know what I wanted back then, but I do now." Aaron swallowed. "And what is it you want?" Ben hesitated, then softened. "You." Ryan had heard enough. He pushed back his stool and stood. "You know what? I think I am going to go." Aaron shot up instantly, grabbing Ryan's wrist. "Wait. Don't." Ryan let out a slow breath, willing himself to stay calm. He didn't want to be someone's rebound. Didn't want to be the person who filled a void left by another. "I like you, Aaron," Ryan admitted, surprising even himself with his honesty. "But I didn't come here looking for drama." Aaron's fingers twitched around Ryan's wrist. His eyes searched Ryan's, pleading silently. "It's not drama," Aaron said. "It's unfinished. But not because I want it to be." He exhaled, frustrated. "Ben is my past. That's all he is. And I don't want to let him ruin whatever this is before it even starts." Ryan didn't respond right away. Because this was the moment, wasn't it? The moment where he had to decide if he was going to take a risk. If he was going to believe Aaron, believe in this, whatever this was. Ben shook his head, stepping back. "I see how it is." His voice had lost its edge now, replaced by something else, something hollow. He looked at Aaron one last time, then nodded. "Take care." And then he was gone. Ryan swallowed, still unsure, still caught somewhere between running and staying. Aaron turned to him, hesitant. "Please don't go." Ryan met his gaze, searching for something real. Aaron had a past. That was undeniable. But maybe Ryan could still be part of his future. "Okay," Ryan finally said, his voice softer now. I'll stay. And just like that, Thanksgiving didn't feel so lonely anymore. The bar felt different now. The air between Ryan and Aaron was heavier, more uncertain. Ben's presence still lingered like a shadow. Neither of them wanted to acknowledge, but the important thing was, Ryan had stayed. He wasn't sure why, but he had. Aaron let out a long breath and ran a hand through his messy blonde hair, looking almost embarrassed. That wasn't exactly how I imagined tonight going. Ryan huffed a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Yeah, well, I wasn't expecting to spend my first Thanksgiving alone in a gay bar either. Aaron's lips twitched, but his usual easygoing confidence wasn't there. He looked off balance, vulnerable. I meant what I said, Aaron continued, his voice softer now. Ben is my past. I don't want him back, and I don't want you thinking that I do. Ryan studied him for a moment, trying to decipher the sincerity behind his words. His gut told him Aaron wasn't lying. But it didn't change the fact that Ryan had walked into something complicated. Look, Ryan said, gripping his glass tightly. I like you. I wouldn't have stayed if I didn't. But I need to know if you're actually ready for something new, or if I'm just some reaction to him showing up. Aaron flinched, and for a second Ryan regretted the bluntness of his words. But Aaron didn't look offended. If anything, he looked guilty. I get why you'd think that, Aaron admitted. He glanced down at the bar, tapping his fingers against the counter. I haven't exactly made things easy tonight. Ryan didn't say anything. He was giving Aaron the space to be honest, to tell him the truth before he got in too deep. Aaron exhaled, finally looking up again. Ben and I were together for 2 years. We broke up 6 months ago. He left. He was the one who said he needed to figure himself out, whatever the hell that means. And now, tonight, when I'm finally moving on, he decides he wants me back? Aaron scoffed. I'm not playing that game. Ryan watched him carefully. So what are you doing? Aaron met his gaze, holding it. I'm sitting in a bar with a guy I really like, and I'm trying not to screw it up. Ryan's stomach tightened. There it was. He hadn't realized how much he'd wanted to hear that until now. For the first time since Ben had interrupted their night, the tension eased. Aaron smiled, really smiled, and Ryan felt the warmth of it spread through him. Come on, Aaron said, standing suddenly and offering his hand. Let's get out of here. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Where are we going? Aaron smirked. It's Thanksgiving, and I don't know about you, but I'm craving pie. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head, but he took Aaron's hand anyway. And just like that, the night shifted again. The diner was nearly empty when they walked in, the neon open sign buzzing faintly above the glass door. It smelled like coffee and syrup, and there was something strangely comforting about the quietness of the place. They slid into a booth near the window, and an older waitress came over, barely looking up as she scribbled in her notepad. What'll it be? Aaron grinned at Ryan before answering. 2 slices of pumpkin pie and coffee. Ryan gave him a look. Assuming I like pumpkin pie? Aaron shrugged. If you don't, this isn't going to work. Ryan laughed, and just like that, the night finally felt normal. The waitress returned a few minutes later, setting down 2 plates of pie and steaming cups of coffee. Aaron took a bite first, closing his eyes dramatically. This is life-changing, he declared. Ryan snorted, shaking his head as he took a bite of his own. And damn it, it was actually really good. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment before Aaron spoke again. So, first time on a gay dating app, first time meeting a guy, first Thanksgiving alone, how does it feel? Ryan sipped his coffee, considering the question. Different, he admitted. Scary, but not bad. Aaron smiled, nodding.
Good. He leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand. So, what do you want out of this, Ryan? Ryan hesitated. It was a loaded question, and he wasn't sure he had an answer yet. But when he looked at Aaron, at the way he smiled, at the way his blue eyes softened just slightly in the dim diner light, he knew one thing. I don't know, Ryan said honestly, but I think I'd like to find out. Aaron grinned. I can work with that. And just like that, Thanksgiving didn't feel so lonely anymore. The diner was warm, a stark contrast to the cold night outside. Ryan could see the condensation forming on the glass window beside them, a subtle reminder of the world beyond this strange, unexpected Thanksgiving night. The hum of the old neon sign, the occasional clatter of dishes from the kitchen, and the low murmur of the radio playing an old jazz tune filled the quiet space between them, and yet Ryan felt more at ease than he had in months. Aaron stirred his coffee absent-mindedly, his blue eyes flicking toward Ryan every now and then, a small smile playing on his lips. It wasn't the cocky grin from earlier, the one laced with confidence and playful teasing. This smile was different, softer, more real. You know, Aaron finally said, breaking the comfortable silence, this wasn't exactly how I expected my night to go either. Ryan smirked, taking another sip of his coffee. Oh yeah? What was the plan? Aaron exhaled, stretching his arms above his head before resting them behind his neck. Drink too much. Flirt with some guy I wouldn't remember tomorrow. Go home. Sleep it off. Ryan chuckled. So I ruined your grand plan? Aaron tilted his head, considering. Nah, you might have actually saved me from another terrible decision. Ryan raised an eyebrow, setting his coffee down. Not a fan of the one-night stand scene? Aaron hesitated before shrugging. It's fine, I guess. Fun sometimes. But if I'm being honest, he leaned forward slightly, his voice quieter now. I think I was starting to do it more out of habit than actual enjoyment. Ryan studied him for a moment, taking in the way Aaron's fingers traced the rim of his coffee mug, his usual confidence slightly dimmed. This wasn't just a guy looking for a good time. There was more beneath the surface. You ever been in something serious? Ryan asked, surprising himself with how much he actually wanted to know the answer. Aaron exhaled, shaking his head. Ben was the closest I got. He glanced at Ryan, and we saw how that turned out. Ryan nodded slowly. He understood that feeling all too well. Aaron leaned back against the booth, his fingers tapping against the table. What about you? I mean, I know you were married, but was it real? Did you love her? Ryan tensed slightly at the question. Not because he hadn't thought about it. He had thought about it too much. I did, Ryan admitted, his voice quieter than before. In a way, at least. I loved her as much as I could. She was my best friend. We had a life together, and for a long time, I convinced myself that was enough. Aaron listened, his expression unreadable. But it wasn't, Ryan continued, rubbing a hand over his face. I think deep down she knew it too. I was never able to give her all of me because I didn't even know how. Aaron didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing against Ryan's hand. It wasn't a grand gesture, not some dramatic, sweeping motion. It was simple, deliberate, grounding. Ryan swallowed hard, his pulse quickening. I get it, Aaron murmured. More than you probably think. Ryan looked up, and for the first time he saw something familiar in Aaron's eyes. Loneliness. Not the kind that came from being single or from losing a relationship. The kind that came from not knowing where you belonged. The moment stretched between them,
unspoken but louder than anything else in the diner.
Aaron broke the silence first, clearing his throat as he pulled his hand back.
"So,"
he said, forcing a smirk, "since we're clearly diving into deep life talks now, tell me, what's next for Ryan, the newly out and figuring things out guy?" Ryan huffed a laugh, shaking his head. "Honestly, no clue." Aaron grinned. "No pressure, but I'd like to be part of that process." Ryan felt something tighten in his chest. Not fear, not anxiety. Something else. Hope.
Before he could respond, the old waitress walked over with the check, dropping it between them without a word.
Aaron reached for it immediately. Ryan narrowed his eyes. "What are you doing?" "Buying you pie," Aaron said simply. "It's Thanksgiving." Ryan rolled his eyes, reaching for his wallet. "I can pay for my own pie." Aaron smirked. "Yeah, but you won't, because I'm faster." And before Ryan could argue, Aaron had already dropped cash on the table and slid out of the booth. Ryan sighed, but followed, stepping outside into the crisp night air. The cold hit immediately, making him shove his hands into his pockets. Aaron turned to face him, rocking back on his heels. "So, what now?" Ryan glanced around, watching the empty streets, the flickering lights of a nearby gas station. It was late, the city had quieted, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't want to go home alone. "Want to walk for a bit?" Ryan asked. Aaron smiled, slipping his hands into his hoodie pockets. "Yeah, I'd like that." And so they walked, side by side, into the night. And for the first time in his life, Ryan wasn't running away from himself. They stopped at a quiet street corner, the cold air making their breaths visible between them. Ryan didn't know why he hesitated, why his heart pounded like he was standing on the edge of something big. Aaron smiled, shoving his hands deeper into his hoodie pockets. "So, do I get to see you again after tonight?" Ryan exhaled, then nodded. "Yeah, I think you do." Aaron's grin widened. "Good." For a moment, they just stood there, staring at each other. Then, without overthinking it, Ryan took a step forward. Aaron met him halfway. The kiss was slow, soft but certain, like a beginning. And for the first time in his life, Ryan knew he was exactly where he was supposed to be.